Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey all, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today's episode is a coaching episode with Dajana. Dajana is a mom of 3 kids, and she came to me concerned about her middle child, her 6-year-old, who she said has a tendency to be sort of grumpy and challenging. And she was really wondering, what's going on with this kid? And also, was there something that she was doing wrong or something that she could do differently to help him feel better and to be a bit more of an easier kid? So we really dove into ideas that she had, suggestions that I had, and of course, as usual, we do another check-in where we find out how things went with her. One thing that's a little bit special about today's episode is that Dajana is one of the members inside of my Peaceful Parenting membership. You may have heard me talk about the membership before. It is a monthly subscription style membership, kind of like Netflix. You pay a monthly fee to be inside of the membership. We have group coaching every week on Zoom. I'm there on Zoom to answer all of your questions. We have a private Facebook group that I'm very active in where you'll always get your questions answered and get support from me and other members. We have a library of peaceful parenting mini lessons that you can access at any time. And we also have a monthly theme. We've done themes on self-compassion, burnout, screen time, siblings, growth mindset. You hear Dajana and I talk about that module in this coaching episode. Lots and lots of wonderful topics that we've covered. And we also always have a guest expert on that theme. If you caught last week's podcast episode, you will have heard the guest expert who was Sheena Hill talking about growth mindset. So if you are interested in joining the membership, you can go to sarahrosensweet.com/membership. The doors to join the membership are open today, Wednesday, October 5th, and they will stay open until 11 p.m. on Tuesday, October 11th. I only open the doors twice a year for new members so that it really feels like a community without a lot of coming and going, and that I can focus on supporting the people who are inside the membership rather than be in constant, trying to get people to join mode. So twice a year you have an opportunity to join, and right now is one of those times. So from today, Wednesday, October 5th, until the evening of Tuesday, October 11th, you can join the membership. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Go to sarahrosensweet.com/membership for more information. And if you are listening to this after October 11th, you can go to that same webpage to get yourself on a wait list to be notified the next time I open the doors. I hope to see you inside the membership, and I hope that you enjoy meeting Dajana, one of my members, and that you learn a lot from listening to our conversation. Let's dive in. Hi, Dajana. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Just so our listeners are aware, I know you because you're in my membership, but if maybe you could just give a little quick introduction of who you are and where you are.
Sure. I'm a mom of 3. I have a 10-year-old, a 6.5-year-old, and a 3.5-year-old, and I'm in Arkansas in the U.S.
All right. Well, welcome. So I know we're here today to talk about your middle son. And so maybe just tell us a little bit about the challenges that you're experiencing, and we'll figure out how I can support you.
Sure. So, I've been following peaceful parenting for a while now, and so I'm familiar with some of these terms like highly sensitive. Is your child an optimist or a pessimist? Are they possibly strong-willed? Do they have a full emotional backpack? Maybe they have some anxiety or chip on the shoulder, or are they getting enough sleep? And so I'm familiar with all of those, in a general sense, and I'm trying to figure out what the challenges that my 6.5-year-old is facing. I can't exactly pinpoint it. He seems to fit into a couple of these categories, but I don't know which one exactly, or is it maybe more than one? And ultimately, I want to figure out how to help him.
So tell us what's presenting. What are the symptoms is the wrong word, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like what are the challenges? How does that show up in everyday life, the things that you're trying to figure out?
So, like, if you could summarize it in one word, when he's being challenging, now most of the time he is like cooperative and easygoing, but there are times, like, 30% of the time or so, when you could label him as being a little grumpy. For example, if he's playing around with one of his siblings and he accidentally gets bumped or hurt during wrestling, he will get mad at them and just kind of lash out of nowhere, it seems. Or when he's doing something with his siblings or even with us and he interprets something as being unfair, he like instantly kind of goes towards that defensiveness and feeling misunderstood. And so what he ends up doing is he ends up kind of getting stuck. He gets stuck in his emotions. It seems to overwhelm him. He doesn't use his words to try to explain what's going on. He doesn't say what he needs. He doesn't say what offended him or, "Oh, you hurt my eye. That really hurt." He just covers up his eye and starts crying, or he'll like kick you with his foot to get away from you. And most of the time, I mean, at least with his siblings, it seems legitimate. Like, okay, so after we talk about it, yes, his concerns were valid, but in the middle of it, he just kind of shuts down. He takes it so personally, and we'll be like, "Why are you so grumpy? That was not really," sometimes we minimize it, which we probably shouldn't, but it's like, that was just a little scrape. Like, there's not even anything on there, and he will just like fall apart. Now, not always, like I said, but there are times. But this is the issue. Like, it happens at least once a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my questions is, how many upsets a day are normal for a 6.5-year-old that may be like strong-willed or highly sensitive or whatever his challenge may be? And if it's not a measure of how often, but just how quickly like they bounce back, how long being in that, I'm stuck in my emotions, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want you near me, go away, stop saying those empathic words, because I don't want to talk about it. How long is it okay for them to kind of be stuck in that, shutting down, like the world is against me?
Okay. So there's so much to unpack in what you just said. I love that you have identified that like sometimes when he gets upset, he lashes out, right? Or he like shuts down, right? So those are like the fight and the freeze of the fight, flight, or freeze. And fight, flight, or freeze is our bodies and our brains' automatic, unconscious response to an emergency, right? Like we all have, like our nervous system is there to always be scanning our environment for cues of safety or danger. And our nervous system is looking in sort of what's going on behind the scenes. It's called neuroception. And it's looking in sort of 3 different areas, right? Our environment. So is there danger or safety in our environment? It's looking in for relationships, like are the people with me or around me, are they giving me cues of safety or danger? And it's also looking within our bodies, like is my body feeling like there are cues of safety or danger within my body? And so our nervous systems and our amygdalas can't tell the difference between a real threat, like a tiger that's just jumped out at us, or a perceived threat, like something that's just really upsetting. And so it feels so overwhelming to him that it set our own uncomfortable feelings of like someone kicking us by mistake or not being able to have ice cream or, not getting the thing happening that we want. Those feelings can be that feeling within our bodies of a cue of danger, right? It can feel that overwhelming. And so it sets off that fight, flight, or freeze reaction. You mentioned that he's highly sensitive.
I think so, because he doesn't want you, like, if you're trying to talk through the feelings, he doesn't want to talk about it right away. He needs his space. I've learned to give him some space, which I've heard you talk about with other members in our group, in your membership, about how highly sensitive kids, sometimes it's too overwhelming, like too much empathy, like they don't want to feel all of that. And so tone it down a little bit, give them some physical distance. So I've learned that works. But it's like, how long should I wait?
Okay. What I was saying, if he's highly sensitive, he's going to feel things more, he's going to get more easily upset than a kid who's just like average sensitive or more easygoing, right? Like a more easygoing kid. And I always think of like easygoing as the opposite of sensitive. And I don't mean to have those be like a value judgment, but some kids just internalize things more, find things more upsetting than other kids. And it's just a temperament question. Like, an easygoing kid would be like, yeah, whatever. And a sensitive kid would be like, no, that's not fair. Or, whatever it is, they see injustice more. They notice things more and feel things more deeply. So of course, when you're feeling things more deeply, you're going to have more upsets throughout the day. And, you said that you tend to give them a little space. I love that. I think that sometimes in our world of peaceful parenting, we've always heard that don't leave a child alone with their big feelings, which I love. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think it's a response to so many parents who would either send a child away when they were having big feelings, or, you still hear this advice to ignore a child who's having a tantrum, right? And so I think that idea of don't leave a child alone with their big feelings is really meant to like offset that cultural idea of like ignoring kids or sending them away when they're having big feelings. And so we always want to have that in the back of our mind, that we don't want to leave them alone. And I think it's respectful if somebody wants some space to give them a little bit of space, knowing that, and I know you and I talked about this in one of the membership calls, of that there's such a big difference between deserting someone or making sure that they know that you're there when they're ready and when they want to hug or when they want to talk about it, and checking in with him. So I don't know, you tell me, like, how long does it take? And does Brody want to talk about it or get a hug or whatever? And some kids don't want to talk through their feelings. Crying is enough, or just being held is enough. But how long does it usually take?
Well, it has gotten shorter over the years. It used to take maybe like 20 minutes, but it was when I didn't realize to back off a little bit. I was like at his door the whole time. But now I'll be like, okay, I'm going to walk away and I'll be back. And then sometimes, 5 minutes later, I'm around right out the door somewhere doing something, waiting because he shut the door, for example. Or if he's sitting somewhere in the living room in a different area where I am, I'll just give him some space and I'll come back after a couple minutes and he'll still look upset, and I'll try to talk through, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll give you some more space. Like, he won't engage in the conversation even. So probably like 10 minutes or so, which
That seems pretty reasonable.
he just looks so grumpy when he's sitting there, and I just feel so bad. Like, I know he's sad, and it's hard to get the tears going in that moment. He does cry when he gets physically hurt, but when it's something like else where, something else where he felt like the limit wasn't maybe empathic, which I know you've talked about that too with strong-willed kids. Like, maybe they get that sense of I'm bad when you don't have enough of that empathy, plus like it's not your fault limit.
Right. It's acknowledging their point of view. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's something unrelated to you. It's just an outside limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, if we aren't careful about how we set our limits, sometimes he may end up feeling that I'm bad.
Yeah. And
that's kind of mad at us. Like, okay, until I can talk through it and say, that's not what we meant. Let me clarify.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you go back and do a repair, when there's been a misunderstanding, or, you haven't clarified something, or led with acknowledging his point of view. And you know what, Dajana, you don't have to be perfect. Like, there are going to be times where we mess up as parents, right? Or where we have a short fuse, or we didn't take the time that we wish we had taken. And that's where repair comes in. You know what, buddy, I'm so sorry I didn't explain that to you properly, or I'm so sorry if that came out snappish. I'm feeling really tired today. It's not your fault. Stuff like that.
Like, for example, a week ago or so, he hurt his finger on something, and I wasn't even in the room. I could hear from a distance. My husband was with the kids, and he said something like, "Oh, it's just a tiny little cut. It was nothing." So he didn't, and he was busy with the other kids too. And my other kids are very easygoing. So my husband thought he had this thing going on, like they were cooking dinner and everybody was kind of engaging in something. And then Brody got hurt, and my husband's like, "Oh, it's just a little thing. Are you okay?" But he didn't even respond to my husband. He felt immediately, I think, kind of unvalidated in his injury, his small injury. And he ended up like going on the couch and just covering up with pillows and like, I'm not talking to anybody. And he was crying like it was a bigger boo-boo. And so then once I collected myself mentally, and I kind of went down there and I said, when I was trying to talk him like not out of his feelings, but talk him kind of to, engage, reconnect. I was trying to reconnect. I was saying that must have hurt so bad. Like, I was trying to see it from his point of view, like,
good.
That must have hurt so bad. And we didn't realize that must have really hurt. And it looked like to us, like it was just a small thing. And like so often throughout the day, it's like, oh, we didn't think that was a big deal. But here he is like in the corner mad. And it's like, we got to go back.
This is the thing too, Dajana, is that the thing that presents as the problem is sometimes not actually the problem. It's just like the last straw, right?
Right.
We were talking about that in office hours today in the membership, a mom has a son who often gets stuck in anger, and that he yells at her like, "You're the worst," and, blames her for everything. I said, "Well, give me an example of something that might be." And she said, "Well, his snack spilled in his backpack and I'm the worst." And I'm like, "Well, it's probably not actually the snack spilling in the backpack. It's that's what set him off from, a hard day. And that was like the final straw." So I think we have to remember that these things that seem very small on the surface can just be like the spark that's needed to, or not needed, but the spark that like sets the fire, right? Like it's just like the fire was like ready to be set, and it was just this little thing. So I think it's really important just to remind ourselves like, okay, I'm going to respond with a lot of empathy about this like invisible scratch that is hurting him so much, knowing that I'm helping him with all of the feelings that are in his emotional backpack. And I'm just going to explain that concept super quick because you and I have both mentioned it, but you are a very knowledgeable, peaceful parent. And so the emotional backpack is a metaphor developed by my mentor, Dr. Laura Markham. And it's a metaphor for our bodies. And when we experience stresses or tensions or difficulties throughout the day or the week or the month or whatever, and we can't process them in real time, we hold on to those feelings, we keep them in our bodies, or we stuff them in our emotional backpacks. But when our emotional backpacks get full, then the feelings need to come out and go somewhere, because the feelings are waiting to be healed, are waiting to come out, waiting to be processed. So somebody who has a full backpack will, start to cry or have a meltdown when they got a little tiny scratch or perceive something unfair, because all those old feelings are waiting to come up. Sort of like, I always use this example, if you had a bad day at the office, you're probably not going to sit and cry at your desk, but you'll hold it all together until you get home. And then you either need to consciously process those feelings by talking to a partner or going for a run or doing something, or else the feelings will come out, when you stub your toe in the kitchen or when you see a commercial on TV or something like that. Those feelings are just waiting. And the beautiful thing about the emotional backpack is that we don't have to know what's in it. You don't have to know what's in Brody's backpack. You can, he can cry about this little hurt finger and empty his emotional backpack, even if it was because his friend said he wouldn't sit with him at school that day, or, whatever's going on. So we don't need to worry about figuring out what's in there. We just have to provide opportunities for it to be emptied. And so, tears, because we've talked about that, but also laughter, which I think you mentioned to me earlier that he's pretty easy to get laughing and that you do a lot of laughing with him.
So that's what's kind of confusing, because I know right after school, he's been, trying to be really good in school, and he's very well behaved at school. And so when he gets home, I know he's kind of like, okay, like I need to release, but he is very easy to get laughing and roughhousing. And we do regularly, just running around, and their friends come over and they're all laughing, chasing each other. And he is laughing physically, not always with me, but definitely like daily. Him and his brother are always giggling. But then like he'll be in a good mood with the laughter, and then like I said, like later on at dinner, he's trying to make his like peanut butter and jelly or whatever he was making, and then the little thing with the finger, and now he's crying. So I guess maybe the laughter is helping him get to those tears. So should I be thankful that he actually broke down and cried? Because I feel bad, because I see his face and he just looks like he's not having a good time.
Okay, so there are some 6-year-olds or 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds or whoever old that probably do need to cry every day, because they are sensitive and they are strong-willed and they get that full backpack. And that's really, really good. You mentioned that usually once a day he has some sort of upset about something. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I think, temperamentally, he sounds like he's a kid who has big feelings, who's sensitive, who's strong-willed, and combined with emotional immaturity, because he's only 6,
right?
Low self-regulation because his brain is still developing. You're going to see these upsets, and you're going to see these tears, and you're going to see these meltdowns. And I want you to like listen very carefully. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that there's like a problem that we have to fix. And there are a couple of things that you had mentioned about flexibility that I think we can talk about, and about his mindset. But those are things that maybe we can work on a little bit. But just these emotional pieces and the upset pieces, I think you're doing great. And I think that you're doing really great. And like, a combination of giving him a little space while letting him know that you're there for him and continuing to check in with him, giving him these opportunities to cry. And nothing that you've said makes me think like, oh, gee, Dajana should really be doing this, and then he won't be having a little bit of an upset every day. There's nothing to me that sounds out of the ordinary. And I think for you, it's hard because you said your other two kids are really easygoing.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you, it could look like there's something, quote, air quotes, wrong with Brody. But I don't think there is. I think he's just an intense kid who's still maturing, and, he's still learning that, emotional self-regulation piece. And I also want to point out that one thing you said in the beginning was that he doesn't seem to be able to tell you what's wrong or find his words.
That's what I was just going to ask you. Because even my 3.5-year-old will say, she'll start crying and she'll say, you stepped on my toe. Or my older kid, my 10-year-old will say like, and the reason I'm mad is, but Brody will just get mad, get that mad look on his face. And so we always say, don't be so grumpy. And then he'll like try to kick you if you're within like proximity, because he feels like you just like stepped over the boundary. Don't you understand? Can't you read his mind? And I can't. I don't even know why he's mad half the time.
I think I would stop saying don't be so grumpy to him, because I don't think we want to label him as grumpy. Like we don't want him to be like, I'm the grumpy one in the family, right? So I would
we don't always say that to him.
Okay.
We joke around sometimes, but we don't say it
I mean, sometimes you can make a joke like that and it will snap somebody out of it and everyone can laugh or whatever.
Right.
And I'm not there, so I don't know what the tone is like. But, I think maybe just it's possible that his emotions are bigger than the other two. And, when we get hijacked by our big feelings and we're, stuck in our amygdala or our downstairs brain, as Dan Siegel calls it, we lose access to our thinking brain. And I think that's what's going on for him. Your other two kids might not be as upset, so they still have some access to their thinking brain where they can tell you what's wrong. And that's what actually sort of bugs me when I hear people say, use your words. Well, if the person could use their words, they would use their words, right? They've like lost access to that part of their brain, and they literally can't use their words because they're too upset. So I think just when you see him upset and you don't know what's wrong, I wonder if you could just kind of pause and remind yourself, like, this is hard for him when he gets so upset, and you focus on maybe just that soothing piece and help him become a little bit, feel more understood, even if you don't know what it is, just like with your own nervous system, just like trying to connect with him. And then if he calms down a little bit, then he might be able to tell you what was wrong or what's going on.
Afterward he does, and he'll say, when my brother said stop chewing with your mouth open, I did, and then he kept saying it like, do you want me to chew with my mouth open? And it was like, it reminded me of something you said before, like, don't pile on.
Yeah. And
like his older brother was piling on, and then he got mad, but he was saying to me like, I did do what he wanted. And I asked his older brother, I said, did he stop doing it when you asked him? And he said, yeah, but I just wanted him to know also, like, does he want me to do that to him? Isn't it gross to chew with your mouth open when we're all eating? And I was
sensitive kids need very, very little correction.
Exactly. I'm really learning that was an example from this morning. So I'm making notes for myself. Do not pile on, and nobody else pile on either.
Yeah. And really sensitive kids, they get it really quickly, what they did, quote, wrong, and they don't need very, very much correction at all. And too much correction, is the opposite of empathic limits, where they get that sense of shame, right?
Yes.
Like he did, like, I already stopped chewing with my mouth open, and he kept saying it, right? So then he like went into a bit of a shame piece.
Exactly. Yes.
So, okay. So I think I really want you to take away from this that there's nothing you're doing wrong, or that you have to figure out about Brody's feelings and his emotional responses. Because I think what you'll see as he gets older is that he starts to smooth out. You're giving him so much in the way of emotion coaching and emotional intelligence. You're responding empathically and compassionately to his feelings, welcoming his feelings, which is going to teach him that they're not an emergency, right? Because right now it feels like an emergency, but the more you can stay calm and just welcome his feelings, that'll teach him it's not an emergency, which will help his amygdala not get quite so hijacked, right? When he's feeling those cues of danger in his nervous system, and he's had these repeated experiences of it not being an emergency from you, it'll start to soak in for him, right?
Okay.
But it is a process of maturity and experience and growth and perspective, and for his thinking brain to become more mature. So I learned this in the book Rest, Play, Grow. I don't know if you've read that book. It's a wonderful book by Deborah
Okay.
McNamara.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about that it's called the 5 to 7 shift, where between the ages of 5 and 7 is when impulse control starts to become more reliable, because what happens is that the thinking brain is developing more slowly and just a bit behind the amygdala and limbic system part of your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
between the ages of 5 and 7 is when they start to be more connected, and for that impulse control and self-regulation to be more predictable and reliable. She says for sensitive kids, it's more like 7 to 9.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it may be also that, Brody's, because he's more sensitive, that shift where he's becoming more capable of impulse control and self-regulation
Mm-hmm.
is just a bit lagging.
Hmm.
So I think that's probably part of what's going on as well.
Great. That's great to hear.
Mhm.
I will definitely keep an eye on
We'll
it.
we'll link to that book in the show notes, and it's a really, really wonderful book. Okay, so let's just, before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about mindset, because I think those are two things that you can help him with that are not necessarily just things that we've got to wait for him to mature while we're welcoming all the feelings. You mentioned that he tends to have some. Why don't you tell me about it? Sort of that global catastrophic thinking that he tends to go into sometimes.
Yeah. So when it's something that's personally kind of involving him, and he's upset, he'll say never, always. It's just those like extremes, or like it's going to be like a long time. It's not going to be short. I can't wait that long. Just kind of that pessimist versus optimist. And he kind of gives up quickly when he faces some resistance still, which I don't know if that's age appropriate, probably is. But like if he struggles, he'll just be like, okay. But if he's really good at something, he knows it, like coloring in the lines. He's really good at that. And he'll just sit there and color for like a long time because he knows he can color in the lines. And he's like, this looks good. But if he's trying to like create some Lego set that he has and he can't figure out the piece, he'll get, easily frustrated. And then I'm not good at this. I'm not this kind of,
Okay, well, in the membership we're doing a theme this month is growth mindset, and growth mindset is I can't do it yet, right? That's the growth mindset is, it's not that you are just born knowing how to do something, but that it takes perseverance and hard work and making lots of mistakes to be able to master something or get to where you want to go. And so one of the things that we were talking about doing as our challenge in the membership was the sharing daily mistakes. Did you get a chance to check that out yet? Because I think that would be really good for your family to, at
Yeah.
dinner, everybody says a mistake they made that day.
Yes, I love that idea. I've heard a teacher, one of my kids' teachers before, was doing that in her class. She said, okay, I've made like 2,000 mistakes, 2,568 mistakes today, something like that. And the kids were laughing. And my oldest son really picked up on that, like, oh, our teacher makes so many mistakes. Look at that. And it was like, it's okay. She can try harder next time. But yes, I love that. And I do need to integrate it more of like a daily practice. So I will be participating in the challenge.
Good. So I think that every day, if everyone says a mistake that they made, the reason why we get so hard on ourselves and sort of turn into perfectionists is because that feeling of making a mistake is so intolerable. And so I think normalizing it, that it's everyone makes mistakes and that it's natural to make mistakes, that's really helpful in having that growth mindset and being optimistic, right? And I think in terms of that rigidity where he's like, it's always, always and never. I think that if you could have some conversations with him, if you haven't already, about how his brain works, and that the amygdala, when we get upset, it feels like an emergency, and our amygdala always wants to convince us that it's that black and white, like always and never. And I think that you can help him recognize when he's feeling that way, that he's gotten hijacked by his worry brain, which is a concept from Lynn Lyons' wonderful book, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And she talks about using that worry brain strategy with kids, where you help them understand how their brain works and that it's feeling like an emergency. And that's where his big frustration and that always and never black and white thinking is coming from. And so when he's in that frame of mind, it's a process of first teaching him how his brain works, and then helping him understand. And it's many, many conversations, not just one. And maybe for the whole family can have this, this vocabulary, but that then after the fact, oh, you know what I think happened there when he's no longer hijacked. I think your worry brain took over and made you so frustrated when your Lego was breaking, and your worry brain was telling you, you never get this right. You always mess it up. And that was your worry brain talking. And so
Okay.
what can we say to your worry brain the next time it shows up? Because you know what? Your worry brain is going to show up every time you make a mistake. And you have to learn to tell your worry brain. I don't know if you've ever been on one of the calls when Mare, one of our members, she talks about talking to her grandson about the perfect boy inside his brain, and that the perfect boy always wants him to do everything perfect. And she sort of intuitively came to the same sort of concept of externalizing that voice from the worry brain or the perfect boy, or the, we talk about like the mean girl, critical, inner bully sort of thing. And so helping him to be able to talk back to that, because you can't stop those thoughts from coming, but you can recognize when they do come. Oh, there's my worry brain, or there's my perfect boy, or there's my inner critic or my inner bully or whatever. And then you can choose to change the narrative and say, you know what, it's okay that I messed this up. I can try again, or I don't have to be perfect. And so, it's worry brain. You always say always, but it's not always true that I always mess it up. So, just giving him language to talk back to that, perfect boy in his head, or worry brain, or whatever it is.
I love that. Yes. And I have listened to your Lynn Lyons workshop, and she talked about like doing a picture of the worry brain and what they give it a name. So we did that with my kids. Now, I don't remember what they named them. It was a little while ago, but I will have to kind of redo those exercises. And I also got them that Hey Warrior book.
Yeah.
We've read that.
So wonderful.
That was good.
Put that in the show notes as well.
Yes.
Hey Warrior is like a really great picture book that talks about, so we've got like the warrior brain or the worry brain or the perfect boy or any of those. Those are really all the same thing, right? And so externalizing that and recognizing, and this is a really lovely bit in the Hey Warrior book, is she says, it's also your friend, right? Like we need our worry brains or our amygdalas to keep us safe. And sometimes they think their job is bigger than it actually is. And they come out when they're not needed.
I love that. It's like they're trying to do everybody else's job.
Yeah.
What I love that you just said, and let me just clarify that I understood this right. You're saying like when the pessimist optimist thing, the pessimist perspective is more the amygdala. The optimist would be like the prefrontal cortex. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Sense?
Because the optimist is like, I can't do this yet, right? Or the optimist is like, we'll figure out a way to make this work out. Or it's that having perspective, like being able to zoom out.
With age and with a larger prefrontal cortex, or with more exposure to that kind of
totally.
Which obviously, peaceful parenting builds the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. And I think that when we're pessimistic, it's because we're stuck in that, that emergency thinking it'll never work out.
And the negativity bias.
Yeah, which we always have to try and offset, because our brains, to keep us safe, our brains are always going to look for the negative more than the positive.
And that's the amygdala, probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And the rest of the nervous system too. And
that really gives me motivation too, just understanding that the neuroscience, because I'm all about the prefrontal cortex. And so it's like, what can this exercise, doing this daily, and the perfect boy, he'll love that. Like it'll really help him build that wisdom, the reflection, the capacity for the executive skills and executive thinking earlier, as much as he can. But, I want to expose him to as much of that as possible.
Yeah, they're great
peaceful parenting. It's like, what else can I add to my peaceful parenting?
I think your repertoire is pretty good right now. But it's skill building, right?
Right.
When we have skills about when we get frustrated or we get anxious, and when we have those tools, when we can use them. My daughter went through, it was probably at least 4 or 5 years ago now, a spell where she was super, super anxious at night, just having like panic attacks. And we worked so hard on the worry brain for months and months and got her to the point where it wasn't an issue anymore. But now, that particular part of sleeping alone was not an issue. But now she has that tool. And whenever she feels anxious about anything, like a test or something that she has to, meeting new people or whatever it comes up, she has the worry brain tool where she can talk back to her amygdala. So it's like a tool for life.
Exactly. I love that. So it's not something they're just going to forget next week.
Yeah.
Your efforts are long-term.
Yeah. As long as you keep using it and reminding them of it, right?
Right. And if they go back to being negative, it's like, oh, we got to go back. Let's go back to the worry brain.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's check in a couple weeks and see how things have been for you.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Bye, Dajana.
Bye.
Hi, Dajana. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So update us. How have things been since the last time we talked a few weeks ago?
So things have drastically improved. Now there's
Wow.
been several things going on, so it's
Okay.
kind of hard for me to pinpoint as to exactly what it is, but in any case, it's been an improvement. If you recall, we talked about, I had all these different ideas about what I thought could be driving the behavior, and I really wanted your kind of guidance on what you thought specifically as an expert, it was the issue, so I could kind of channel my resources and strategies towards that.
Mm-hmm.
There's, different strategies work for different things. And one of the things that I really valued in our conversation was that you mentioned that you definitely felt like he was more highly sensitive, and that whole delay in self-regulation as a result, like the 7 to 9 time frame versus younger
5 to
5
7.
to
Yeah.
7. Mm-hmm. Kind of just validating some of these things for me. One of the things I had mentioned is that I felt he was strong-willed. And so once we got off the call, I really kind of, in my natural fashion, I went into high research mode on all these different things, just so I can put my own mindset more around it. Because I know you mentioned I should really create safety. I should focus on accepting the emotions as they come, that they will pass. And really the most important thing was staying calm. And so after that, you held your strong-willed child workshop, which I attended. And that was great because it really, it's hard when he's highly sensitive and strong-willed. It's kind of like, which one is it? Which one is it coming from? So it's like a double hit.
Yeah. That's actually my favorite temperament, sensitive and strong-willed. Maybe that's because that's what I am. I don't know. I just realized that.
Well, and with the right parenting support, I think you're set up to thrive. It's just the parent kind of needs to know what you need from them. But what's been really helpful is realizing that my number one strategy is me staying calm and my own nervous system. And so just that simple mind shift, which I already knew that from before, the self-regulation piece, stop, drop, and breathe. Of course, you can't do that as a parent if you're not calm, all those other strategies. But it's just somehow talking to you about it. It was like, when I look at him during a meltdown, it was like, he's just having a hard time. It did powerfully shift me into that, I need to really stay calm with my nervous system. And
so Dajana, if I could just cut in, I think what shifted, if I can maybe just paraphrase a little bit, is before you were thinking it was a problem.
Right.
We have to fix Brody. Yeah. We have to fix it. What's the problem here? And I think that one of the things I was trying to help you see is well, this is just who he is. And this is where he is in his development, and that you're realizing that focusing your energy on yourself and keeping calm is the most helpful thing you can do for him.
Exactly. And I think previously I felt like I had to ease his suffering during a meltdown, but I couldn't because it's not my meltdown.
Yeah.
And so I kind of really reframed that. When it's a 10 out of 10 meltdown, it's there's not much you can do, but there are things I can do the rest of the day prior to that and afterward. And so during the meltdowns, it's become really a little easier for me. It's okay, he's just having a hard time. All I can do is stay calm. That's the best resource I can give him right now. And then one other thing that really, and you've talked about this before with parents that struggle with yelling, which really helped me stop yelling as well so repetitively, was that shame trigger. And as I learned more in my research about highly sensitive kids, is that one of the things that happens after they have the meltdown is they start to feel like a bad kid. Mm-hmm. And it's this, I'm a bad kid. And
that's why we always talk about, I think we talked about it a little bit in our first call, is that letting him, leading with empathy, right? And letting him know that you don't think that he's bad, right? And sensitive kids, you need to be much more explicit about that.
Right. Exactly. So even though I didn't think he was a bad kid myself, I didn't really verbalize it so much. And I don't think I realized that I didn't verbalize it. And that's really helped. So now during a meltdown, I would say, you're a good kid. You're just having a strong feeling.
Oh,
you were just
beautiful.
Afraid.
Oh, you're giving me chills.
It's been really an epiphany. And what I saw in his fear, what I saw in his face was fear. He was afraid. He wasn't when they look so angry and they're stuck in anger, what I could see behind it was that there was a fear of the feelings.
Yeah.
They
feel overwhelming.
Exactly. A real overwhelm. I'm scared. And I don't know, it just saying it, like if somebody's not in that moment, they might just like not really realize what it really means. But when you see that fear in their eyes, you're like, oh, my poor child. Like I have to help them from themselves. And it's not like I'm going to stop the feelings, but I can create safety. And that's where I started using words like, you're not a bad kid. You were afraid. And then validation, of course. Anybody would have felt like this if they were in your shoes. If this had happened to me, I would have been afraid too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm here with you, like, and just saying that. And then he'd look at me like in shock, like, wow, what are you saying? Like, do you really understand me? And then,
wow. So did you feel a response from him?
Yes. The response was that he wasn't stuck in his anger. He came out of it. Like one time recently, he started laughing and I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? He was like laughing because I was containing his arms. He was trying to kick me because he was like, don't talk empathy. And I really toned down my empathy a little bit. I didn't do like my usual empathic thing, what I do with my other kids, because it was like too much. With him, I had to be more like, I've got you. I can contain this.
Did you hear the podcast? I don't remember which episode it was. We'll put it in the show notes. But the coaching call with one of our other members, Julia, where we worked on her having to tone down her empathy response because it was too much for her sensitive child.
Yes, I did. And when I heard that one, that's where I was kind of like, I think in hers, she was saying like her daughter was like hiding in the closet. And she was like, I'll stay right here. I'm not going to come in the closet with you because you have nowhere to go in the closet from me. And I was like, that is a great point. So like give them some space, but don't leave them alone. So it's like, they're trying to like test you. They're saying like, they're doing all these like bad things in their meltdown to try to get you to think that they're a bad kid. And what they want from you really is to say, you're not too much for me. I can handle you no matter what bad thing you do right now. Even if you kick me with your foot because I'm being too empathic, I'm not going anywhere. And you can't make me go anywhere because I'm staying right here. And it's just that safety, and verbalizing it really helped. And, you know, it's not so empathic in a sense. It's more like sturdy leadership.
I love it. I love that, Dajana.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And I really wasn't tapping into that before, like that alpha leadership. I was trying to be more like that tender compassion, which works at certain times and works with my other kids for sure. But with this one, it's like that strong-willed piece is like the child is kind of saying like, am I more powerful than you in this room? Are my emotions more powerful than you can handle, parent? And the answer needs to be with your nervous system, of course, because, you know, that's nonverbal. You need to truly be calm with the deep breathing, but also just verbally say like, it's like a limit almost, like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the stronger your child is, the more sturdy you have to be.
Yes. Because they're like pushing. It's like, you know how they push with the limits, but they're pushing with this too. Like, can you handle the force of my emotions? Because really what they're saying is, I can't handle it. Can somebody here handle this? Because I can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm here. I can handle this.
When I talk about teenagers, I got this like great metaphor from the book Untangled by Lisa D'Amour, where she talks about teenagers and their feelings when they feel uncomfortable. I think this applies to everybody, but it's like this hot potato. Like they don't want to hold it. They want you to hold it. Right. So like, can you hold this feeling for me?
Right.
That's what came to mind when you were just talking about that.
Yes. And, you know, it goes back to creating safety. And it's like, duh, we know we need to create safety. But sometimes it's it's a nuance thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what I'm hearing is like, instead of focusing on trying to fix Brody's meltdowns and feelings, which is what you kind of came to me with, like this whole long list of all of the possible diagnoses that it could be, right? Instead of like trying to fix it, like we're not pathologizing that anymore. We're thinking, okay, it is what it is. That his feelings are what they are. And now how can I change how I show up for him when he's having those feelings, which is just amazing.
Right. And what I've also, you know, researched in my little studies here is that like, obviously they have a delayed self-regulation. Like children that don't have these strong, overwhelming feelings, they can like stay with that negative sensation in their body for longer and they can tolerate it longer. Like I can tolerate my children's meltdowns longer now because I'm more self-regulated. In the past, it was like it started and then I kicked into my fight or flight. It was like a short distance. But the longer we can stay with them in our own calm nervous system while they're having the meltdown, they're like borrowing from our nervous system and they're able to stay with the negative feeling too, because it's in the room. It's like the elephant in the room, that negative feeling that they're having, it's there. And it's like, we're basically like giving them a longer tolerance for the negative feeling by letting them borrow from the safety of our own calm nervous system. Does that make
Love
sense?
it. Yeah, totally. Well, you really, I mean, it sounds like things have really shifted for you. I'm so pleased for you and for
Well,
Brody.
and you're going to love this part. So, you know how we talked about growth mindset was an opportunity?
Yeah.
It kind of went hand in hand with this. I think the reason he was a bit of a pessimist is because he was feeling like a bad kid.
Mm.
And when we shifted this whole thing, like his face just nowadays looks like so relaxed and like just like smiley, just like laid back and like relaxed. You can see it. Like it does that chip on the shoulder, the full emotional backpack, like it's not there. Like there's been little incidents that would have, and I'm like kind of like, I'm a little bit more anxious now because I'm like, oh, when's it going to happen again? Like, I can't believe it's been a week.
Okay, but you have now you know how you were in a certain place, you know how you got out of that place. So if you get back in that place again, you can get out of it again, right? Because you've got the awareness and the tools.
Right. And like he's more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
You know how I thought it was maybe anxiety too. Now, part of it, one thing that could be playing a role in this, school just finished, like they've been home for a week or 10 days or so. And so school has like after school meltdowns were like irregular. And weekends were there too. The meltdowns were there on the weekends. Maybe it wasn't long enough of a time period, but that could have also triggered like the shorter self-regulation time frame because
there's less pressure on him.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But last summer, he still had some of the self-regulation issues during the summer. It wasn't like a big shift, but like,
maybe it's a combination.
Yeah. And I'm sure it all adds to the nervous system overload. And it's like, you can only handle so much before you just like pop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the growth mindset, I think that was really interesting. We did start like a mistakes jar and the I don't know, like, you know, I don't know. What do you think? And I also got a book on growth mindset activities. Like we're talking about, you know, how all these inventions in the world are here today because people made mistakes. You know, people made mistakes.
You can't learn
discovering,
without mistakes.
Yeah, like electricity and all this stuff. Like, well, they shouldn't have made those mistakes. Well, I'm glad they did because we got all this stuff going on, like the internet. Yeah. Whoever made up the internet probably made lots of mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. So that was what we were talking about in our theme for the month, the growth mindset and sharing mistakes. And you're not the only one who has found that to be pretty transformational in their family. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's, you know, it's something that we can continue to learn on the growth mindset stuff, but it's really like the pessimism has like dropped down from like an 8 to like a 2, maybe.
Wow.
The only things that are happening now that are a little bit of a still of like a pessimism thing is like transitions. And I think part of that is going back to highly sensitive. Like when I'll say like, let's go to the library. We're going to plan to go to the library. Who wants to go? And all my other kids are like, me. And he's like, no. I'm like, why does he not want to go? Oh, well, because there's some feelings about it.
We'll like change. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I have to stop doing, like I'm comfortable doing things right now in the house. Why do we have to go? We'd have to do this and that. And I just feel certain ways about it. It's those feelings again. Like I don't want them, like, don't make me go anywhere because then I have to like rev up for it. But we eased into it. We're, you know, was strong-willed. I was like, well, how about we stay here for 20 more minutes and you guys finish your game and then we'll go to the library and stay there for only for 20 minutes. Then we'll come right back. And he was like, okay, deal. I'm like, deal.
Okay. So you used one of the strong-willed child strategies of, you know, giving choices.
Right. So it's been really helpful. And I'm hoping to continue to learn more about strong-willed, you know, adults because this child will only become an adult later on.
It's all the same. It's all the same. Except for as adults, we don't have as many people bossing us around as we do when we were kids.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was great. Thank you so much for coming back and letting us know how it went. And I'll be able to continue hearing from you in the membership.
Yes. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dajana. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.